introducing what we know as functions, okay? We'll talk about this f and how it represents a function, or maybe in this case doesn't. We're going to figure that out. What they've given us is a couple coordinates here, right? Each of these coordinates have two values. One of them represents an x, and the other one represents a y. So we're going to talk about the different ways we can organize this information, okay? One way that we can organize this information is by making a table of values. Have you ever seen this before? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what we're probably going to want to do is we want to have the table of values in some kind of an order. Okay. So if we notice of all of our x's, this is the lowest value x is 0. Okay. So we'll start with 0. Then the next lowest value x is 1. Then the next lowest value is 2. And then finally 3. So now that we've put those in order, we're going to write the corresponding y's that go along them. Now the y's won't go in order, they're just attached to whatever the coordinate is. Okay, so if the x value is 0, our y value in this case is what?
1.
Yep, and when our x value is 1?
0.
2 is?
3.
And 3 is?
2.
Okay, so we've set this up as a table of values. Okay, another way they can represent this, now there's no duplication in this one, so actually what I might do is I'm going to add an extra coordinate to the end of this. We're going to call it 4 and 1. Okay, we're going to call it 4 and 1, so we'll add that to the bottom, 4 and 1, and there's going to be a reason we do this. The next thing they represent, and this is just a different way to represent something. So here's our table of values, okay? Table of values. Another way they may represent it is a mapping diagram. So it's going to look something like this. And you really don't use too many mapping diagrams. In fact, your teacher might not even go into it. The mapping diagram deals with, again, x and y values, but there's no duplication with numbers. Okay. Well, if we look in the x's, there are no duplication. Everything is just written in order, 0, 1 to 4. So we would write the exact same idea. We have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But in our y's, we do have duplication. The number 1 is written twice. We're not going to write it twice in our mapping diagram. We're going to write 1, we're going to write 2, 3, and 0, and we'll write them in order. So that's 0, 1, 2, and 3. But if you notice, they're not corresponding directly beside each other, right? We know 0 is actually 1. So what we're going to do is use arrows to help point where we should go. So because 0 is attached to 1, that's how we'd set that up. We know that that coordinate's there. 1 is attached to 0. We use an arrow to represent it. 2 is attached to 3. 3 is attached to 2. And what's 4 attached to?
1.
So we have to draw another arrow to that number 1. So even though there are technically 2 values of the number 1, we only write it once and we just have 2 arrows going to it.
But that's not a function, right?
We're going to just figure out if it's a function or not. I'm going to show you why. So this is a mapping diagram. And another way we can represent this is we already have the coordinates, they've been written there, is by graphing the function, right? So let's actually get a graph out here. Scale of 1, here we go. So scale of 1, we'll scroll that down a bit. Okay, and let's actually write what these values are. So we have coordinate of 0 and 1, 1 and 0. So let's put these down. So we have 0 and 1. That's our first coordinate. 0 and 1. Right? We have 1 and 0. That's over here. Right? Mm-hmm. We had 2 and 3, which is here. We had 3 and 2. Oh, sorry, yeah, thank you. 2 and 3. We have 3 and 2, which is here. It's a pretty big one. And the last one we had was 4 and 1, correct? Mm-hmm. 4 and 1. Okay. Now, in order to tell if something's a function, it's usually best to look at it as a graph. Now, these are only coordinates. They're not continuous. We'll talk about a continuous function right on the bottom after. These are just coordinates. So to tell if something is a function, we put it through the vertical line test. Okay, and the vertical line test is, all we do is we draw a vertical line, I'll change the color to blue here, through every coordinate. If the vertical line only touches one point every time, then it is a function. So I draw the first one, it's only touching one point. I draw another one. 1 point, 1 point, 1 point, and 1 point. So because every time I drew a vertical line here, it only touched 1 point, then it is a function. Okay, so this is a function. I'm going to say yes, is a function.
So is it when you have the same x's that it?
When an x coordinate has two y variables. So I'm just going to quickly make another function up. Okay, that was our first one. The next one we'll do in red, and we'll do them as dots. Let's say we had 2, 3. Oh, we've already used that. Let's say we had negative 2, 3, negative 4, 4, and negative 2, 5. Okay, let's say those were the only 3 coordinates. So we plot those. Negative 2 and 3, negative 4 and 4, and negative 2 and 5. Well, when we draw our vertical lines here, this part passes, but does this part pass?
No.
No. So because that happens, no, that's not a function.
So if there's 2 dots on one line.
On one x value.
Oh.
There's 2 y values for one x value.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So in a mapping diagram, what that would look like, it would look like having, see how every x value, there's only one arrow going away from it? If there are 2 arrows going away from it, then it won't be a function. The easiest way is to graph it and do the vertical line test. Okay? Another point we're going to talk about is there's such things that are continuous functions, and the best way to tell if they are functions or not is just really to draw a vertical line test. So here's another continuous function, and you might remember this as a parabola, right? Well, if I draw vertical lines to this guy here, oops, there we go. If I draw vertical lines, am I going to hit more than once?
Yes. No.
No. So is this one going to be a function?
Yes.
Yes. This will be a function. And finally, let's say I had something that maybe looked like this. So these are all different functions when drawing. If I draw vertical lines to this, am I going to hit more than once?
Yes, you are.
So is that a function?
No.
No, this one is not a function. Okay? So we've talked about things that are functions and the different ways we can represent them. Mapping diagrams, table of values, graphing, or coordinates. Okay?